Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Iran says it has successfully enriched uranium to 60% purity level at the Natanz nuclear facility. The Speaker of Iran's parliament said the will of the Iranian people is miraculous and will thwart any conspiracy. It comes after Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said that Iran categorically rejects negotiations just for the sake of negotiations. Meanwhile, the latest round of revival talks in Vienna ended without yielding any clear results. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of MARIB has killed 96 pro-government fighters and Houthi rebels over the past 2 days. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich MARIB since February. The Kremlin says President Vladimir Putin is considering counter-sanctions on Washington. Speaking to reporters on a conference call, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the U.S. is not interested in creating mutually beneficial ties with Russia. This comes after U.S. President Joe Biden said now is the time to de-escalate tensions after slapping new sanctions on Russia. In Myanmar, opponents of the military rule have announced a national unity government. They said the government includes ousted members of parliament, leaders of anti-coup protests, and ethnic minorities. Earlier, protesters called for a silent strike to mark the third day of their traditional New Year holiday. Activists say the security forces have killed over 720 people since the February 1st coup. India has reported a record spike in daily COVID-19 cases for the fourth straight day, with nearly 217,000 infections overnight. Meanwhile, a variant with potentially worrying mutations first found in India has now been detected in the UK. Pakistan has registered over 5,300 cases and 110 more deaths, taking the toll to nearly 16,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.98 million lives and infected nearly 139 million people. And in cricket, South Africa are batting in the fourth and final T20 International as Pakistan chose to bowl after winning the toss at Centurion. Pakistan are leading the four-match series 2-1. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Iran says it has successfully enriched uranium to 60% purity level at the Natanz nuclear facility. Tehran announced to increase the purity level from 20% after an attack on the same plant. The Speaker of Iran's parliament said the will of Iranians is miraculous and will thwart any conspiracy. It comes after Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran categorically rejects negotiations just for the sake of negotiations. In a statement, Zarif said talks for the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal should not be driven by propaganda machines or election campaigns. Meanwhile, the latest round of revival talks in Vienna ended without yielding any clear results. After the meeting, China asked all the stakeholders to speed up the negotiations. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of MARIB has killed 96 pro-government fighters and Houthi rebels over the past 2 days. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich MARIB since February. Pro-government officials have said that the battles are raging on several fronts outside MARIB amid a concerted push by the Houthis. The rebels see MARIB as a strategic prize that will give them more bargaining power in all peace talks that Washington says must begin soon. The conflict in Yemen has killed tens of thousands of people since 2015. Millions have been pushed to the brink of famine in what the UN has described as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. U.S. President Joe Biden says now is the time to de-escalate tensions after slapping new sanctions on Russia. Talking to the media, Biden said there is still room for the two countries to work together. However, the U.S. President Joe Biden said Washington will have to respond if Moscow violates its interests. Biden's comments came after the U.S. imposed sanctions on Russia over alleged election interference and malicious cyber activities. The sanctions target over 30 Russian entities, including expulsion of 10 diplomats. Russia has denied the allegations and said Moscow's response to the sanctions will be unavoidable. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Ministry also summoned the U.S. ambassador for registering protest over the sanctions. Russia has summoned the UK ambassador over London's recent criticism of Moscow. Britain has blamed Russia for escalating tensions in eastern Ukraine and the border. The British embassy in Russia said this meeting at the foreign ministry in Moscow was planned. The UK foreign ministry earlier said it summoned Russia's envoy to express concern about malign behavior and Moscow. It said the move shows London's support for actions announced by the U.S. President Joe Biden. At least 8 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire at a FedEx facility in the U.S. city of Indianapolis. Police said the suspected gunman also killed himself while several people were transported to the hospital with injuries. A police officer said there is no active threat to the community anymore. The officer said it is unclear what motivated the shooting, but investigations are underway. The FedEx facility is located close to the Indianapolis International Airport. This follows several mass shooting incidents witnessed in the United States in recent weeks. A top U.S. general in Europe says there is a low to medium risk that Russia will invade Ukraine over the next few weeks. This is the first such military assessment amid mounting concern about Russian troop movements towards Ukraine's borders. Air Force General Todd Walters said the assessment by the United States military does not suggest a Russian invasion at this point, but Walters said he is not ruling out one or playing down the risk. In testimony before a White House of Representatives committee, Walters said his view is partially based on the disposition of Russian forces. Meanwhile, the leaders of Ukraine, France, and Germany are set to hold three-way talks in Paris today. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said this is an important preparatory meeting for the Normandy format. Pakistan has once again called for an international probe into the extrajudicial killings of innocent Kashmiris. At a weekly press briefing, the Foreign Office spokesperson said the killing of Kashmiris are a clear violation of international law. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry also criticized Indian troops firing on a mosque in Shopian. He said the attack reflects the moral bankruptcy of the occupation forces. Indian troops have killed over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory's autonomy in August 2019. Additionally, more than 14,000 people have been arrested, including politicians and even children. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has reshuffled the federal cabinet. The Prime Minister has appointed Shaukat Tareen as the country's new finance minister. Tareen has replaced Federal Minister Hamad Azhar, who has been appointed as the Minister for Energy, replacing Omar Ayub. Khosrow Bakhtiar has been appointed as the Minister for Industries and Production. Shibli Faraz has been appointed the Minister for Science and Technology, replacing Fawad Chaudhry. While Fawad Chaudhry has been appointed the Minister for Information and Broadcasting, replacing Shibli Faraz. Omar Ayub has been appointed as the Minister for Economic Affairs, replacing Khosrow Bakhtiar. Pakistan has recorded 110 more deaths due to the coronavirus in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll is approaching 16,000. It said another 5,364 people have tested positive. The number of infections has surpassed 745,000, with more than 78,000 active cases. Nearly 651,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. The ministry says more than 4,300 patients are in critical condition. Meanwhile, the country's medical research agency, National Institute of Health, is working on a plan to develop a single-dose vaccine. India has reported a record spike in daily COVID-19 cases for the fourth straight day, with nearly 217,000 infections overnight. Meanwhile, a variant with potentially worrying mutations first found in India has now been detected in the United Kingdom. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.98 million lives and infected nearly 139 million people. More on the pandemic in this report.
With a baffling surge in COVID-19 infections, India is once again home to the world's worst outbreak, overtaking Brazil. Amid record cases, the country has found itself short of vaccine as it exported tens of millions of doses. Meanwhile, for Brazil, rights group Doctors Without Borders say humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding in the face of the government's failed COVID-19 response. Hospitals in the country are running out of drugs, with reports of patients being tied down for painful procedures without sedatives.
The use of mechanical immobilization in patients without sedatives is a bad practice. We should not do it. Therefore, the patient is subjected to a form of torture and cannot even ask for help when he or she feels uncomfortable in the situation they are in. That is why the lack of these drugs has made us suffer a lot with our profession, and question every day when it will end and when we will have some consolation.
In US, Johnson & Johnson vaccine delay in the US will further hamper the rollout. Meanwhile, Pfizer CEO has now announced that patients will need a third shot 12 months down the line. In Europe, Norway is still undecided over resuming the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine or stop it altogether. In England, a latest report shows that COVID-19 cases rates have fallen in all regions of the country. However, the situation in Germany is different, where the government has asked its 16 federal states to tighten curbs quickly.
I call on the federal states in this urgent situation. I already said a week ago that we need extra measures and that we need to act accordingly. Time is not on our side, and everyone already has the option to be taking measures already and need not wait for the law to be finalized.
A South Korean consortium is set to produce 100 million doses of Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine per month. The UN humanitarian chief has warned that the world's largest humanitarian crisis in Yemen is getting worse, with the outbreak roaring back.
In Myanmar, opponents of the military rule have called for a silent strike to mark the third day of their traditional New Year holiday. People have shunned the usual festivities of Thingyan this year to protest the February 1st coup. Earlier, protesters in Myanmar's south marched before sunrise and arranged candles to spell out Revolution Thingyan. More people were shot and killed in the central town of Mingyang overnight. Activists say the military has killed 726 civilians in the post-coup unrest so far. Meanwhile, a South Korean steelmaker firm has announced to end its joint venture with Myanmar military conglomerates. However, the company's spokesperson said it is not pulling out of Myanmar in view of the country's crashing economy. Israeli military says its fighter jets and attack helicopters have bombed multiple targets in the occupied Gaza Strip. In a tweet, it claimed to have hit Hamas military post after alleging that a rocket was fired from Gaza. Palestinian media said the Israeli military also conducted a ground raid in the northern village, while an eastern locality came under heavy aerial fire. So far, no casualties have been reported. Meanwhile, Palestine has called on the world to take stand against Israel's legal settlements. The Organization for the Islamic Cooperation has also condemned Israel's settlers' raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. In a statement, OIC called on international community to take necessary steps to put an end to Israeli violations that fuel violence. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The foreign ministers of Turkey and Greece have clashed openly at a joint news conference in Ankara. The conference began with hopes of improved ties, but quickly descended into an exchange of accusations from both sides.
Greek Foreign Minister Nikos Dandias said Athens is ready for a positive agenda with Ankara, but will not abandon the EU principles. He added the option to take measures is always on the table if Turkey continues to violate Greece's sovereignty rights. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said Ankara had hoped this first meeting would continue in a positive atmosphere. He added, however, unfortunately, the Greek foreign minister made completely unacceptable accusations against Turkey in his speech. Cavusoglu said he did not speak of issues in front of media, but Dandias dared to do so to give a message to his country. Earlier, the Greek foreign minister also called on President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
The French Parliament has passed a security bill to extend police powers despite protest and criticism from rights activists. The Senate has already adopted the bill while the National Assembly approved it with 75 votes to 33. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said policemen and gendarmes must be protected because they protect the public every day. The new legislation allows police to use drones to monitor citizens in public and toughness sentences for people attacking police. Critics oppose the bill for being too vague, saying it threatens efforts to denounce police abuse and is too broad. Earlier, the French branch of Amnesty International said the bill poses danger to civil liberties. The United Nations has warned that the Tigray conflict in Ethiopia's north is not over yet. UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Mark Lowcock said the situation is worsening. In a briefing to the UN Security Council, Lowcock said there is no clear proof of withdrawal of Eritrean troops from the region. He said sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war. Lowcock also said that relief agencies are facing huge challenges to deliver aid to the starving people. Earlier, Amnesty International reported violence by Eritrean forces against Ethiopian civilians. It called for an international probe into the conflict. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in has dismissed the Prime Minister and 6 other cabinet ministers. The president removed the ministers for land, industry, fisheries, labor, and science and technology in a bid to revive his party. Moon has nominated Kim Boo-kyum, a former interior minister and 4-time parliamentarian, for prime minister. All new candidates have been confirmed to a parliamentary hearing, but lawmakers do not have the power to block the confirmation if the president pushes through. This comes after Moon's Democratic Party suffered massive losses in a special election for key mayoral posts. In Hong Kong, media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 14 months in prison. He is among several activists who were found guilty of unauthorized assembling during the 2019 anti-government protests. Lai also faces separate charges under the city's new security law that criminalizes secession and subversion. Those sentences including prominent politician Martin Lee and 7 other former lawmakers. Meanwhile, Beijing's top official in Hong Kong warned foreign forces not to interfere in the city's internal security matters. In Australia, a federal court has found Google guilty of misleading consumers about the collection of location data on Android devices. It said Google falsely claimed it could only collect information from location history settings on user devices from 2017 to 2018. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission said it is seeking declarations and penalties, but it did not specify any amount. The regulator's chair said that the ruling is an important victory for consumers concerned about online privacy.
What the court found was that Google misled consumers into thinking that if they turned off location history, then that would stop Google storing and keeping, or collecting and keeping, their personally identifiable location data, when in fact that was not the case.
North Korea marked the 109th birth anniversary of the founder of the state, Kim Il-sung. More in this report.
The Day of the Sun, which falls on April 15th, is the birthday of current leader Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung. It is the biggest holiday of the year in the country. State media released photographs of Kim paying respects at the mausoleum for his grandfather. He was accompanied to the Kumsusan Palace of Sun this year by his wife, Ri Sol-jo, sister Kim Yoo-jong, and senior North Korean officials. Meanwhile, locals in Pyongyang celebrated with a firework display. People wearing traditional clothing and face masks danced at Kim Tu-sung Square.
Kite makers flew a 280 meters long kite for the first time in Wangfang City of East China's Shandong province. Over 20 factory workers took 48 days to make a kite ahead of the 38th Weifang International Kite Festival.
Shandong has a long history of kite flying. According to Chinese records, in the spring and autumn period, more than 2,000 years ago, a carpenter named Gong Shuban invented a wooden kite. In the following centuries, kite making thrived in China, while the enthusiasm for kites continued in Weifang. This kite, with a dragon head and a centipede body, is 4.2 meters high, 3.6 meters wide, and more than 280 meters long, which is the largest kite of its kind. Staff members of the kite factory spent 2 hours flying the kite, which was divided into 4 sections and flown one by one. Kite fans can enjoy the splendor of the longest kite at the annual Kite Festival, which opens today, together with the kites of 118 teams from across China. The first festival, held in 1984, attracted kite fans from 11 countries and regions, including the United States, Britain, Japan, the Netherlands, and Australia. At the 5th festival, Weifang was named Kite Capital of the World.
The red carpet has rolled out once again for guests at the Universal Studios theme park in Hollywood. This was made possible by the global rollout of vaccines and an easing of social restrictions. More in this report.
Universal Studios Hollywood opened up its doors for the first time in over a year, after being shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. Tickets for the opening weekend were sold out days ago.
It's amazing to be back in a theme park, to be able to walk around and just be able to just go on rides and have some great food again, have a butterbeer again. Like, just totally awesome to be back here. So.
The park has reopened with several new operational guidelines due to the pandemic. It is to operate at 25% capacity with other standard procedures like mask, social distancing, and repeated sanitation of the rides.
It's pretty good. I feel like they're doing a great job at keeping everyone safe by distancing everyone, having different routes, and taking their time cleaning the rides before people get back on. Even though it takes a while, I understand they're being precautious due to COVID-19.
Some rides and indoor dining restaurants have not been reopened to comply with the COVID guidelines. However, the Jurassic Park ride has been improved, and the Secret Life of Pets themed ride is a new attraction.
European stocks are trading slightly higher as global stocks take heart from strong U.S. economic data and recovery prospects. Frankfurt's DAX is leading the gains, ascending over 0.5%. London's FTSE has also gained nearly 0.5%. The Pan-European Stock 600, Italy's FTSE MIB, and the CAC 40 in Paris have edged up marginally. Earlier, Asian markets traded in positive territory as well. China's economy has expanded at a record pace of 18.3% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2021. That is the best quarterly growth since 1992, when China started publishing such figures. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the gross domestic product has risen to $3.816 trillion. Head of Statistics Lu Aihua says the national economy made a good start despite the pandemic. Officials say the recovery was led by strong domestic and foreign demand and greater vaccination efforts. The country's exports grew by nearly 31% from a year earlier in March. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.